You bought a Bitcoin ETF. Your account shows a positive balance. The price goes up and your number goes up. The price goes down and your number goes down. It looks like Bitcoin. It moves like Bitcoin. But you do not own any Bitcoin. And the difference between what you have and what Bitcoin actually is matters more than most people who sell ETFs will tell you. I'm Sats, and today we're making this distinction actually make sense. Let's keep it simple. Let me start with what a Bitcoin ETF actually is, because the name is designed to sound like ownership and it is not. An ETF is an exchange-traded fund. A Bitcoin ETF is a financial product that tracks the price of Bitcoin. You buy shares in the fund. The fund holds Bitcoin on your behalf. Your investment rises and falls with the Bitcoin price. You own shares in a fund that holds Bitcoin. You do not directly own the underlying Bitcoin or control its private keys. Here is why that distinction matters. When you own Bitcoin directly, you can hold the private keys yourself. When you control the private keys yourself, you can hold and transact with Bitcoin without needing an ETF provider or broker to authorize each transaction. That gives you a degree of control that an ETF cannot provide. When you own shares in a Bitcoin ETF, you do not have those same Bitcoin native capabilities. Your shares are held by a broker. The Bitcoin underlying those shares is held by a custodian, typically a large financial institution. To access the value of your investment, you sell the shares through your broker, receive dollars, and withdraw through the traditional financial system. You cannot withdraw the underlying Bitcoin from a conventional Bitcoin ETF to a wallet and send it to someone else in Satoshis. You have exposure to Bitcoin's price. You do not have Bitcoin. This is not a theoretical distinction. It has practical consequences. The point is not that an ETF is the same as a crypto exchange account. It is not. The point is that with an ETF, you own a financial claim through intermediaries rather than controlling the underlying Bitcoin yourself. There are still intermediary, regulatory, and structural risks. You are relying on the fund structure, its custodian, its brokerages, and the regulatory framework around the product. Those risks are different from the risks you take when you hold Bitcoin directly. There are also fees. Bitcoin ETFs charge an annual expense ratio, and the exact fee varies by fund. Self-custody does not charge an ongoing management fee for simply holding Bitcoin, although buying, selling, and moving Bitcoin can involve other costs. If this is the kind of honest Bitcoin conversation you are looking for, the subscribe button is right there. Here is the honest case for a Bitcoin ETF. Not everyone should be holding Bitcoin directly right now. For someone who has a traditional investment account, is not yet comfortable with the technical aspects of self-custody, and wants exposure to Bitcoin's price movement within a familiar regulated environment, a Bitcoin ETF is a legitimate and accessible option. The regulatory protections around traditional brokerage accounts are meaningful. Tax reporting can be more straightforward within a traditional brokerage account. The interface is familiar. A Bitcoin ETF is not a fraud or a scam. It is a legitimate financial product that does what it says it does. What it does is track the price of Bitcoin, not give you Bitcoin. The question worth asking before you buy one is what you are actually trying to achieve. If you want exposure to Bitcoin's price within your existing investment portfolio, and you are comfortable with the trade-offs, an ETF is a reasonable tool for that purpose. If you want the properties that make Bitcoin distinctive, the ability to hold it outside the traditional financial system, the self-custody, the censorship resistance, the direct ownership, a Bitcoin ETF does not give you those things. Only owning Bitcoin directly does. So the question is simple. Do you want exposure to the price of Bitcoin, or do you want to own and control Bitcoin itself? Those are not the same thing. An ETF can be a reasonable tool for price exposure. Direct Bitcoin ownership gives you control of the asset itself. A Bitcoin ETF gives you the price. Bitcoin gives you the asset. Here is the short version. A Bitcoin ETF tracks the price of Bitcoin. You own shares in a fund that holds Bitcoin. You do not own Bitcoin. The difference matters because direct Bitcoin ownership gives you self-custody, censorship resistance, and access outside the traditional financial system. An ETF gives you price exposure within the traditional financial system with intermediaries, fees, and counterparty risk. A Bitcoin ETF is a legitimate product. What it does is track the price, not give you the asset. Ask yourself what you are actually trying to achieve. Exposure to Bitcoin's price or ownership of Bitcoin. A Bitcoin ETF is the right tool for the first. Only owning Bitcoin directly gets you the second. If you came here because you realized you might not own the thing you thought you bought, that is exactly what this channel is about. Real Bitcoin questions and problems, explained before they become expensive mistakes. If you want to understand how to actually buy Bitcoin directly, the Coinbase walkthrough covers the complete process. And if you want to understand what makes Bitcoin actually yours, the video on private keys covers that from the ground up. Both are linked below. Stack smart, stay curious. See you in the next stack.